it's true then the Trotskyites have won. They've taken over and they've infiltrated, and we're now, I mean, what do we do now?
Well, Trotsky still considered himself a Marxist, and Trotsky was not willing to completely throw the Soviet Union out. He maintained it was a deformed workers' state. This is a group of people that were followers of Trotsky, broke with him at the beginning of World War II, and carried with them a certain level of intellectual alienation and anti-populism that had defined their politics. That's why they'd become Marxists to begin with. They wanted to be edgy. They were different than everybody else and all of that. And they carry that kind of strand of thinking with them as they craft U.S. foreign policy. And John Bolton, who is, somebody that is just widely hated among the American people. He's a war hawk. Trump kicked him out of his administration. They've just had his home raided. He's somebody who was trained in the Sovietology academia fields that are very much crafted by these people. This mindset kind of defines U.S. foreign policy. And the American people don't agree. We don't agree.
Right. The American people don't agree.
They know that. They don't like us. They think it's okay to lie to us and manipulate us to support their wars.
Yeah. But I'm not willing to just yet throw out the fact that that they're not Marxists. And let me explain. Because I don't think that the U.S. foreign policy with wars, their bloodlust and endless desires to depose dictators, I don't know if that really has anything to do with capitalism. Now, I think there's definitely a strain of those who support the wars, who say, yeah, this will be great for us too. So we'll support your war. It is kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? We'll go to a group, we'll say, okay, we'll support your revolution. We don't really agree with you, but we'll support it because the end goal, we have the same end goal. So I don't know if the neocons are actually capitalists. I think there's definitely capitalists within the same who have the same agenda. So they say, okay, we'll fund the wars, we'll help you because ultimately then we want to have the resources, we want to build businesses, we want to do these things. But I don't think that's like why John Bolton goes into war, for example. I don't think John Bolton has a shred of capitalistic thinking or ideology in his brain. I think he just wants war with the Soviets for whatever reason. And that would be some almost like deep-seated, ingrained, taught from birth sort of hatred of the Soviets for no other reason other than just to hate them. And so that, when I think of like the neocons, like even the Hillary Clintons of the world or whoever, or Bill Kristol, or even like Zionism, right? Like when you look at that, none of this is rooted in capitalism. There's not really an economic strain to this. There's something else there that causes them to be rabidly pro-war. So I don't know if I'm willing to totally throw away. Now I know, you and I might disagree on Marxism or whatever, and I'm not. To me, it's just an economic thing. I don't actually look at capitalism or Marxism as inherently evil or not evil. I just look at them as economic structures. They don't have feelings. So you can either make capitalism or Marxism, I think, evil. And you could also make probably both of them benevolent. I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter. They're just economic systems. So, and one might be more flawed than the other or whatever, and we could have that debate all day. But to me, that part doesn't actually really matter. So, I'm not really willing to, and so I'm saying that so that you understand that when I say I'm not willing to say that they're not Marxists yet, it's not because I'm saying, oh, they're Marxists because they're evil. I'm just saying, okay, that's just an economic thing. So, and I don't think that their warmongering has anything to do with capitalism. I just don't. I don't think that there are groups who do that want to siphon resources and want to take advantage. I just don't think it's this neocon group. Well, and I actually don't really know what their motivation is, except they hate authority, they hate dictators, they want to depose them, they want to spread democracy.
Well, putting aside what their motivations in their own head might be, I mean, I'm not a mind reader. I read what they write and what they say their motivations are. Let's just talk about the facts. Until Stalin came along, Russia was an underdeveloped agrarian country, wasn't fully electrified, wasn't industrialized. Stalin did the 5-year economic plans, and they built the largest power plant in the world. They built a huge oil industry, a huge steel industry. After the Second World War, they became the first country in outer space. They built themselves up into an industrial superpower. And suddenly they were no longer an impoverished section of the world that we could dump our resources on and sell products to. They were a competitor on the global stage. And the same for China. Until the Chinese Communist Party came along, China was a deeply poor country. Now China's the second largest economy in the world. Huawei Technologies makes way better phones than Apple, the biggest telecommunications giant in the world, the biggest steel industry in the world. They've lifted 800 million people from poverty. They've turned China into a powerhouse. And now, again, China's not a captive market that the Rockefellers can sell oil to, that we can dump products onto and, get addicted to opium and opium wars. Now China is a competitor. Right. And that's what monopolies don't want. Monopolies don't want competitors. And that imperialism is monopolistic capitalism, capitalism in its monopolistic stage. And so that's where these wars flow from, and that these monopolies, they fund big think tanks that hire academics to think about how to push their system and oppose their competitors. And if you're an academic and you want to get jobs and you want to get book deals and you want to get promoted, you say what those foundations want to hear. Right. And a group of Trotskyites seems to have realized that they could hold on to their edgy radical beliefs and their desire to tear it down and win the world for justice, but they could go to work for Western imperialism, tearing down the regimes that get in its way, rather than working, to oppose the Western system. I think that's really what it gets down to for me.
How do you explain, so just so that I understand the difference, because I don't, Germany, Nazi Germany, actually had, I think, in history, the fastest economic turnaround in the history of ever, right?
Sure.
So what was their economic system compared to, like, when you're bringing up Soviet Union or China? What was different about Nazi Germany, or was it the same?
It was very different. Germany was already industrialized. It was an industrial power at the time that Hitler came to power, and they were experiencing the Great Depression, and they were, devastated economically. And he used a heavy-handed authoritarian state to reboot their economy, primarily with militarism and degrowth. It's been said before, they put half the country in concentration camps and the other half in military uniforms. But they took a number of very dramatic moves that it was a dramatic method of reverse inflation. They forced women out of the workforce. They had a big campaign. They have a picture of a woman. This woman is taking a job away from a good German man who has kids to feed. They threw all the labor leaders in concentration camps. They hired a bunch of people to work in the concentration camps as guards, a bunch of people to build the concentration camps. A bunch of people are in the concentration camps, so they're no longer looking for jobs. They built the Autobahn highways connecting Germany across. They restarted military spending, which they hadn't had since the end of the First World War. And as a result of boom, 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 very dramatic moves, imprisoning a bunch of people, drastically shifting the workforce, getting rid of unemployment, they were able to reboot the economy of Germany for 4 or 5 years. But by 1939, the Germany economy was slowing down again. And that's why they had to expand. And as they expanded, they seized these territories. They were acquiring more slave laborers. And they stimulated private corporations like Volkswagen by having a bunch of concentration camp inmates work for them for free. It was like the first prison industrial complex. And that it was basically, there's a good book by Lothrop Stoddard, who was a white supremacist, a Ku Klux Klan member, who was on the board of Planned Parenthood when it started. The Nazis liked him enough. They took him over to Nazi Germany as World War II was starting. He wrote a book about how their economic system works, which I've quoted in some of my other works. And basically, Lothrop Stoddard says they took it out of their own hides. They destroyed the productive forces of Germany. They kind of forcibly destroyed the productive forces of Germany. They made the population largely poorer, and in doing so, they eradicated unemployment, and they got the economy moving again for 4 or 5 years, and then it slowed down. It was not a state-run economy. Krupp and Tyson and Hallemer Schacht, the banker who picked out Hitler and decided he would be the dictator as an alternative to communism, they were never nationalized. They never had their property taken away. They were making profits hand over foot, but they had a very heavy-handed government that made sure that there was no opposition to them and was kind of forcing these degrowth economic measures to stabilize the economy.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.